Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Find Your Significant Other. Today I have my first guest for this podcast, my good friend, Michael Wall. Hi, Mike.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sylvia. I'm so excited to be here. It's always a pleasure when you and I get to talk.
Thank you, Mike. The same. So, he is the podcaster of the podcast, the Two Opinionated Podcast. He has interviewed me a lot of times, so now is my turn. And I decided I want to speak with him about love because this
Oh,
podcast is about true love. So I want his opinion as a man. Mike, who is your significant other?
well, so my wife is Emily Wall, and it's it's a little cheesy to say it, but well, let me tell you, if you got a minute, let me tell you a quick kind of how we got together, and this will give you an idea of our relationship. So we both went to work for a Ticketmaster call center around the same time, within a few months of each other. We didn't work together, but we were in the building together. We were both married, different people at that time. Well, over the years, I eventually got divorced. And then a couple years after I got divorced, she got divorced. We still spent no time together, didn't particularly like each other, being honest. But my boss at the time was also her boss, and he got tired of the two of us moping around. So individually to each one of us, he said, you should talk to that Emily girl. She's pretty nice. And she did the same, or he did the same with Emily. He's like, yeah, that Mike guy's not too bad. But he was really just sick of us moping around. Well, she came into my office one day, and I was so miserable and unhappy. I was like, I'm gonna ask her out. And it was the worst uh, asking someone out that has ever happened. I fumbled it, I struggled. I mean, it was awful. But she didn't say yes, but she was interested a little bit. But just after we had this little conversation, she turned around and starts walking out of my office, and in my head, I'm thinking, oh, I I think I'm going to marry that girl. And I don't know why. Just this feeling came over me that I was just in that moment. I knew. And then a couple of days later, she was out with some girlfriends and had stepped outside. They were at a bar and had stepped outside just for some fresh air. And for whatever reason, I came into her head, and she called me. And we ended up talking for about an hour, while her friends are waiting. And we set up a date, and that was 21 years ago, and we're still together, and just absolutely love being in love with each other. It's been the best. It's been the best. And this is the best part. This is my favorite part of the story. When I was in college, I owned a couple of comic book stores. That's how I put myself through school. Well, Emily's younger than I am, and she was on her first date with her ex-husband, who's a terrific guy, um, was at my comic store. He brought her to my comic store, and I was there, but I don't remember her coming in. But my mother had just happened to be in the store, and she remembered Emily. So then, years later, it was probably 10 years later that we actually went on a date. My mother knew who she was. And I've always loved that part of the story. It's like the universe was saying, here's a glimpse of the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, but not yet. Not yet.
I think it's destiny.
What's that?
I think it's destiny,
Oh, I
fate.
totally agree. Yeah, I believe that. I think the universe will put people in your path that are supposed to be significant to you, but it may not be at that time. But they start that in motion, and then at some point, that person becomes really important to you. I absolutely believe. I was in bad shape when Emily and I got together. I at that time. I didn't have Parkinson's at that time that I knew of, but I'm celiac, which is a wheat allergy. And it's worse than a wheat allergy. It's an autoimmune disease, but I was so sick, and I hadn't been diagnosed at that time. It wasn't easy to diagnose that. Now it's a blood test, very easy. Back then it was difficult. So, I was going through testing for months, and I got so sick that I'd work during the day, and then at night I would go to our local hospital and they'd put me on IV fluids overnight. And then I'd go home, take a shower, and go back to work. And that went on for months. I was so miserable. I'd been divorced for a couple of years, but I had to move back in with my parents, and I was just an unhappy guy. And I absolutely believe Emily coming back into my life at that time saved me. I wouldn't be nearly the person I am if she hadn't come into my life. And the great thing about Emily is she's artistic. She's the hardest worker I've ever met, and she's very, she's the global, the SVP of global compliance for Live Nation. She's very, very important now. But the great thing about her is that she's artistic and she's caring, and she really opened up my world just with the beauty of everything. She sees the beauty in everything, and she's passed that on to me, and that includes people. The way I interact with people now is directly related to the influence she has had on me. So I probably didn't say that very well, but hopefully that gives you an idea.
That's beautiful. And who is the first step then?
Who is what?
Who gave the first step?
Oh, I think it was me, because I asked her out, and well, this is actually a quick one. She wasn't 100% in for a while. She liked me. She wasn't 100% in. I was 100% in right from the moment she stepped out of my office. I was like, that's my person. And once I figured that out, I held on until she was ready. And I like to tell this story that she had to go to Europe, and she asked if I would house sit because she had a dog. I was still living with my parents at that time. We'd only been going out for a few months. And I said, sure, just to get out of the parents' house. Well, I went over to her house. She was going to be gone a couple of weeks. And at that time, she was more recently divorced than I am, or was. So she had a house, but it wasn't really furnished. She hadn't really moved in, so to speak. So I'm over there staying. And I just decided I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. This is where I want to be. So she came back from Europe, and I had bought a couch and a TV and gotten cable. So she came home, and I was like, we got cable. And she says, we. And it was in that moment, I was like, oh no, I have messed up. And it was dicey. Like she almost just kicked me out. But for whatever reason, she didn't. And then, that bond that we had, she got on board, and it's been perfect ever since. But I always laugh about that, because in my head, I kept saying fortune favors the bold. But that was a pretty bold move. I basically just moved in without her permission.
So how long you been dating before moving together?
Well, so only a few months, maybe 6 months total, because we didn't, we both had 2 children each coming into the relationship. We didn't introduce the kids to each other and for about 6 months, but it was shortly after that, and we lived together for 3 years, and then got married in 2008, and we're still in the same house. Absolutely love it. And the best part is, one of our daughters lives across the street. Across from her is one of our sons. My son that does the podcast with me is at the end of the block. And then my oldest, our daughter, is about 15 minutes away. It's fantastic. Oh, I'll say this too. Emily's ex lives on that same street with us. So we trade the kids back and forth. Him and his wife are awesome. My ex lives about 15 minutes away, and she's awesome too. And we all just kind of parent together. I mean, it's been terrific.
So sounds very good. And how did you propose?
Well, I could have done better on the proposal, but I let the kids help. The girls mostly, the boys, they were pretty young. They didn't really they were too young really to grasp what was going on. But the girls were a little older, so they helped pick out the ring, and I did it there at the house. I would, now that I'm a little older and got some experience and stuff, I would have done a better job of it, but it went great. I mean, she said I do right there. It was just us, us and the kids. So I think that kind of bonded us even more. We're trying to combine families and stuff. And we did the wedding there at the house and the reception there at the house, and yeah, it was pretty great.
So, what's true love for you, Mike?
Well, to me, and this is coming from experience, if you find your person, because everybody's fallen in love, but to really maintain a loving relationship, it's a relationship to me is about sacrifice, and not in a bad way. Like, Emily and I love to do things for each other, and it's not a chore. There's certain things that I don't mind doing, that, like, I'm a very routine person. So I like things like laundry, dishes, because I don't mind it. It's just a routine task, no big deal. It's kind of therapeutic for me. My wife hates that stuff. She's normally on a kind of higher level of thinking. She hates the routine stuff. So we figured that out. So I do the routine stuff. She's that allows her to be creative and to bring all this artistic beauty into my life. So my advice with that is find the things, in a relationship, it needs to be equal, but that doesn't mean that you have to do the same things. Find the things that you don't mind doing that your significant other does or doesn't like, and vice versa, and do those. And as long as you're splitting up the duties in a relationship equally, a relationship's going to be pretty good. I think the mistake a lot of people make is they get resentful because one or the other is not doing their equal share of the work. Relationships hard with that. For an example, I'm a terrible cook. Emily's a great cook. She cooks, but when she's done cooking, she doesn't have to touch anything. She can just walk away, and then I'll come and clean it all up. And I'm like that with her anytime. I'm like, I normally, traditional relationship, maybe the woman is the one that cleans the house and stuff. Well, in our relationship, Emily she's too busy with her actual job to really do that stuff. And I don't mind doing it. So most of the housework stuff I do, but I can't cook. So she has to do that. Now the outside stuff, I do the mowing, that stuff, but landscaping and just making the house look beautiful, that's all her. So that's a long way to say my advice is find the things that you don't mind doing that your significant other doesn't like to do, and do those, and make sure whatever you're doing, it's at least half of the work. And if you do that, it kind of builds that foundation where you can really grow together. I love doing things for her, and she loves doing things for me. So in those situations, that isn't hard. That's not work. And it's never a thing, well, I did this for you, so you have to do this for me. We don't look at it that way. It's just we're in this relationship together, and whoever's doing what, it's moving us forward together.
It's a good advice. And what would you say to young people? Because I can see a lot of young people don't believe in true love. They give up very easily. So what would you say to them?
Well, the biggest advice I'd have is wait as long as you can before you get married or before you fully commit to a relationship, because most of us aren't emotionally mature enough to really handle an adult relationship. And that includes up through our 20s, in my opinion. But most of us get married or get in those really large relationships early, in our teens or early 20s. And that's why you struggle. Why do you struggle? Because neither one of you has any money. So money puts this big strain on the relationship. Usually you end up having kids fairly quickly, which puts a strain on the relationship. And it's pretty tough. And then as soon as it gets tough, they just go their separate ways. Like it was like they were never in the relationship. I've never been a fan of that. You pick this person for a reason. If they weren't the right person, you probably shouldn't have picked them. That doesn't mean you can't make mistakes, that people can't change. That stuff happens. But my advice is just simple, date for as long as you can until you're both really ready to get married. And then once you get married, wait to have children until you're established, till you have some of the money stuff figured out, till your jobs are more secure. And then when you have children, the money part's taken care of, and you can really just concentrate on being a parent. Now, it's easy to say, but really hard to do in practice. But that's my advice. And live within your means. Most of the time, you get married, you get a house, you put yourself in debt, basically. Don't do that. If you can't afford a house, even though you want one, don't get one. Rent until you can afford it, because money is the biggest stress on a relationship. And if you can avoid that pitfall, you got a lot better chance to surviving and not just surviving, but actually making a loving relationship. You can love somebody and they can love you, and it can be great. But if you're so stressed out because of the finances or the other pressures you have on you, the relationship's probably going to fail.
And what would you say when someone don't dare to give the next step, or doesn't dare to ask for a date to someone?
Oh, you mean asking somebody out?
Yes.
Well, I don't know that I'm the best person, because I've always said this. I'm not somebody's first cup of tea, or nobody's looking at me and going, oh, that's somebody I want to go out with. That doesn't happen. But if you get to know me a little bit, then I'd have a little better chance to maybe ask you out. I'm pretty confident once you get to know me, it's like, well, he's not a bad guy. Maybe you go out. But nobody was back then was just me asking somebody out, and they're going, yes, just because, this. But once they got to know me, I felt pretty confident that they'd at least want to go out. I mean, don't ask somebody out by text. Get off the dating sites. My opinion. Not that you can't find people on there. You can, but to me, the best way to meet people is in person and having a conversation and actually seeing if you're compatible. If if your views kind of line up, or at least aren't so different that it causes friction, and that your interests, don't necessarily have to be the same. But, like Emily and I, we're exact opposites as far as what we like and the things that we do. But we're supportive of each other's passions. So even though I may not be an artist, I love that she's an artist, and I allow her to pursue those passions. And she does the same thing with me in the podcast and the other things that I enjoy and stuff. So you want to find somebody that you're compatible with. Doesn't have to mean that you have the same interests, but if they have interests that you really hate or you really aren't supportive of, then that's going to make it very difficult to have a successful relationship. You got to find people that, if your interests don't align, if you're opposite, then you can at least appreciate and be supportive of their interests, even if you're not directly involved in them.
Gus, as last question, what would you say to someone who is too shy to ask a girl for a date?
Oh, and this, Sylvia. Back when we were growing up, especially me, I've been I've been around for a while. We had to use a landline telephone to call a girl's house, and you had to get through a parent to get to the girl to ask her out, and that is stressful. Having to talk to a parent that you haven't met. And they're usually they're going to give you a little bit of a hard time because it's kind of enjoyable for them to give you a hard time, but that's stressful. So if you wanted to go out with somebody back then, you really had to work up the courage, because you're going to have to get through the gatekeeper, the parent, to get to them. Kids today don't really have that issue because they've all got their own phones, so they can call somebody directly. My advice, though, if you're worried, don't text, call them, and don't make it like a traditional date. Ask them, say, hey, I'm going to go do this weekend. I'd love for you to come with me. I think we'd have a good time. And then you're not saying it's a date. Maybe you're not even going like to dinner or a movie or whatever, traditional dating things is, but you're doing something together that's low pressure, and you can get out there and just have fun together. Because I think that's where you can really tell. Once you're comfortable with each other, then asking somebody for a date, that's no big deal. But you're not going to be comfortable until you're actually talking with that person. So take some of the pressure off. Try to make a friend first, and then see where it goes.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Mike, I love speaking with you about love, and I hope I meet Anne soon. And I think you are a great couple. So thank you for your advice. It's lovely to have you in my podcast, Find Your Significant Other. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sylvia. And I love how you kind of look at relationships and love, and I think it's similar to me. I do believe that there's somebody out there for everybody, and probably multiple possibilities out there for everybody. Don't settle. Find somebody that is right for you. And if you're in a relationship and it's difficult because of external factors, then instead of just getting out of the relationship, try to fix those things that are putting pressure on it, and see if the relationship improves. But if you've worked at it and you really can't make it work, and it's just not a good fit for you, then don't stay in that relationship. I do think people get out of them too quickly, but also think some people stay in them way too long. Find the person that here's a great way to say it. Find the person that makes you a better person. Emily makes me a better person. I wouldn't be the person I am today without her. And I think the reverse is also true. So find that person. If a person isn't making you better and you're not making them better, you're probably not meant to be together.
You're right. You're right.
Sylvia, thank you for having me on. I've had the best time. We got to do this again. I love talking about love. It's terrific.
Yes, we have to do again. Maybe next time with them.
Yes, I'd love that.
So it's done. You have to speak with Anne, and we can see what she thinks.
Okay.
How can people follow you, Mike? How can they?
Yeah, so our social media everywhere is MeisterCon. So you can see it behind me there. It's got 4 A's behind me. It's only one. So MEISTERKHAN, MeisterCon. You can find us on all social media. Our website's meistercon.com. YouTube is MeisterCon Pod. If you go to any of our sites, please subscribe. It's like following. It does not cost you any money. We don't ask for any money. We just want that support. So any of our social media, please check us out and subscribe. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Mike. I see you soon.
I'll see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.